Exactly 12 months, Donald Trump has gone from completely dominating the political moment to being buried by it. Donald Trump today finding himself on the defensive when it comes to his administration's betrayal of a campaign pledge to release the Epstein files. Further complicating Trump's political peril, there are brand new questions about Trump's relationship with the deceased sex offender and trafficker Jeffrey Epstein. That is thanks to 23,000 pages, an avalanche of new information, and unstoppable momentum right now on Capitol Hill for legislation that would force the release of the files that Team Trump has tried so hard to keep hidden. We are learning more today from Epstein's communications with his friends and associates. In one email from 2019, Jeffrey Epstein writes, quote, "Trump knew of it and came to my house many times during that period. He never got a massage," end quote. We should know we don't know exactly what Epstein is alleging Trump knew. MSNBC has not independently verified the allegations made by Jeffrey Epstein in these emails. Epstein wrote that message, though, just months before he was arrested on sex trafficking charges. Now, here's what Trump said after Jeffrey Epstein's arrest.
No, I had no idea. I had no idea. I haven't spoken to him in many, many years, but I did have no idea.
It doesn't exactly square with what his spokeswoman, White House Press Secretary Karoline Leavitt, said yesterday.
Jeffrey Epstein was a member at Mar-a-Lago until President Trump kicked him out because Jeffrey Epstein was a pedophile and he was a creep.
Karoline Leavitt says, quote, Trump kicked him out because Jeffrey Epstein was a pedophile and a creep, end quote. Trump, young girls, I had no idea. Either, but not both, right? Did Trump know or did he not know? Epstein survivor Annie Farmer tells MSNBC this in a statement, quote, "The more information that comes out about Jeffrey Epstein, the more questions we are left with. Survivors deserve more than a trickle of information. It is time to pass the Epstein Files Transparency Act and for a full release of the Epstein files. The estimated 1,000 women and girls who were harmed by Epstein and his associates deserve full transparency, as do the American people. A vote to release the Epstein files will take place next week, much earlier than expected. It is expected to pass in the House. Republican Thomas Massie, who has been the bill's most prominent Republican backer, had a message for his colleagues. Quote, Donald Trump isn't going to be president forever, but your vote goes down in history. Watch this.
Well, I've already had a couple Republicans tell my office privately that they're going to vote for it, and I think that could snowball. The deal for Republicans on this vote is that Trump will protect you if you vote the wrong way. In other words, if you vote to cover up for pedophiles, you've got cover in a Republican primary. But I would remind my colleagues that this vote is going to be on your record for longer than Trump is going to be president. And what are you going to do in 2028 and 2030 when you're in a debate, either with a Republican or a Democrat, and they say, how can we trust you? You covered up for a pedophile back in, 2025.
Donald Trump barreling toward a major political reckoning amid brand new revelations from the estate of Jeffrey Epstein is where we start today with some of our most favorite reporters and friends. Investigative journalist Vicky Ward is here. She profiled Jeffrey Epstein for Vanity Fair in 2003 and has been covering this story ever since. Joining us at the table, former SDNY Criminal Division Deputy Chief, MSNBC legal analyst Christy Greenberg's here, and my friend and colleague, contributing host of Pod Save America, MSNBC senior political analyst Alex Wagner is back. Vicky, let me start with you on the substance of the emails first. What did you learn, or what did the public learn, maybe even if it was something you had reported earlier, for the first time yesterday in this release of emails from Jeffrey Epstein's estate?
Well, I think we got confirmation of something I'm not shocked by, I'm not sure anyone else is, that obviously Donald Trump, it would seem, knew of Jeffrey Epstein's abuse of minors. I thought the email that he sent Ghislaine Maxwell in 2011, which was when Virginia Giuffre first came forward and gave an interview to the Mail on Sunday about Epstein and about Prince Andrew. I thought that was very interesting. He referred to Trump as the dog that didn't bark. And he also referenced Michael Reiter, who was the Palm Beach police chief. And he then said, "I'm getting there, ... That was the most interesting email to me, because it's been reported on my Substack. I've interviewed Michael Wolff. We saw it in another email that was released yesterday. We don't know what caused the rift between Jeffrey Epstein and Donald Trump, but Jeffrey Epstein, it seems clear, believed that Trump had done something strange financially when he bought that piece of property outside of Palm Beach in 2004. He writes in the email, Trump had no money, and yet he bought a mansion that Epstein had wanted for $45 million, and he sold it 2 or 3 years later for a multiple of about 3 to a Russian oligarch who I've met and who was going through a complicated divorce at the same time. And so, I'm looking for threads that could possibly connect the dots around that.
Vicki, we are cautious in taking things that the White House press secretary says from the podium and fact-checking them. But on a story like this, we don't always have all of the information that someone who's covered the Epstein scandal has. Is there any evidence anywhere? Has Trump himself ever asserted that he, quote, kicked him out of Mar-a-Lago because he was a pedophile and creep, end quote?
Yes, that's exactly what he said to Sam Nunberg, who was one of his first political advisors back in late 2014, early 15, which is the second time that Virginia Giuffre made her allegations, which she had by then put into a class action lawsuit. She raised them a second time, and there were more names in it. And that became the beginning of all the litigation it took years, but it wound up being the backbone of the criminal lawsuits against first Jeffrey Epstein and then against Ghislaine Maxwell. I will also say, Nicole, there is, the acknowledgement from Epstein in an email that Trump knew about the girls. It's been reported, most people don't know this, it's been reported by the lawyer of the girls himself, Brad Edwards, who was the first lawyer to really come and represent the victims after that plea deal, interviewed Donald Trump in 2009. And Trump was very quick to come to the phone with him. And he told Brad Edwards that he had been inside Epstein's house in Palm Beach and that he had looked out the window and he had seen a bunch of young girls in the swimming pool, and that he'd been bewildered because what Epstein had said to Donald Trump was that they were in some sort of mentorship program and he was mentoring them. And Donald Trump himself said to Brad Edwards in 2009 that he thought that was very strange. So make that of what you will.
I'm just trying to piece together what's been publicly uttered. So in 2009, he says to a lawyer for victims that Epstein is a mentor to young girls, but he saw them swimming in his pool. And then you're saying the relationship falls apart over a real estate deal earlier than that. But Trump's rationale, once Virginia Giuffre makes her accusation in 2014, becomes what his press secretary is saying, that he kicked him out of Mar-a-Lago because he was a, quote, pedophile and creep?
Yes, and it's not clear to me whether it was because of Virginia Roberts. Based on my reporting, my understanding is that he kicked Jeffrey Epstein out later than that. And it was actually over someone else I don't know who that was. It was actually maybe over the daughter of a member. That is all I know. But I would also say this, that kind of adds to the complications around all of this. Jeffrey Epstein believed that Donald Trump was the person who went to the Palm Beach police in the first place about them, that the feud over this house got so bad that it was Donald Trump who turned him in. And I had always thought that that sounded kind of absurd. You know, why would Trump do that? But the other thing that really struck me reading all of these emails, particularly from Jeffrey Epstein's last 4 or 5 years during Trump's first administration, is he seems obsessed with Donald Trump. He seems obsessed with getting access. He can't get to Trump himself, so he gets access through Michael Wolff, who was sitting in the corridor outside the Oval Office for the first year of the Trump administration because it was so chaotic. I mean, that's how he managed to write his first book. Epstein befriends Steve Bannon. And if you look at all these emails, whether it's with Larry Summers or Catherine Rummeler, now the general counsel of Goldman Sachs, I mean, he's almost demented the way he goes on and on about Trump. And, you know, it's very puzzling, Nicole. I have to say, it makes me wonder, what is it that Donald Trump so desperately doesn't want us to know that could be in the Epstein files?
Joining us now, MSNBC senior reporter Brandy Zadrozny, MSNBC political analyst and host of Fast Politics podcast, Molly Jong-Fast, senior reporter at The Bulwark, Will Sommer, and former RNC communications director and GOP strategist, Doug Heye. All right, I'm going to start with Will and Brandy on just the emails themselves and the reaction. Brandy, a lot of emails here. And again, we don't know the full context. And Jeffrey Epstein is not exactly, a trustworthy person in all of this. But he does seem to have a real interest. Obsession might be taking it too far, but a real interest in Donald Trump and what Donald Trump knew and what Donald Trump may be hiding and how he could potentially use Donald Trump. Epstein could use him as Donald Trump's political star started to rise.
Yeah, I think these emails tell a story, or they lay out a mystery. And what I've been so interested in is, not just that, what is the relationship? What did Jeffrey Epstein want from Donald Trump, and how did he go about going, to get it? But I've been really looking at the right-wing reaction to that. The far-right MAGA people who I and Will watches most of our days, if there's one thing that they love, it is a leaked email. It is a dump. And for some reason, with this one, it's nothing to see here. Alex Jones, the conspiracy theorist, the Sandy Hook denier, he has said that these emails just prove that, in fact, there is a deep state out to get Donald Trump. Pizzagate influencer Jack Posobiec, same sort of thing. He says these emails exonerate Trump for some reason. And I think it's fascinating that these people that really fuel these conspiracy theories, and again, have from WikiLeaks and John Podesta's emails, Hillary Clinton's campaign emails, have never shied away from an email leak. Suddenly, nothing to see.
Well, there's a narrative to spin. Let's play Alex Jones.
I know the stuff Congress released is all old news. It actually proves that Trump wasn't having sex with underage girls. We know the whole story, but because Trump handled it so horribly, saying, don't look at it, you're not my constituents, and did all that, is it even worth it to spend, an hour? It's riveting stuff. It's very interesting. I have all the clips, the witnesses, the victims, the lawyers, and I can show you how the Democrats, in the way the cherry pick these files, they say more is coming, and this is the best they've got. And when you actually know the story, it shows that Trump was the guy that actually first exposed Epstein.
So, there are the Alex Joneses, there's the Megyn Kellys, there's the Mike Cernoviches, et cetera. But there's also, there's other accounts online that we kind of follow to gauge reaction to Donald Trump. There's Patriot Voice, which is talking about how the MAGA movement is dead. And they're using this to to get angry about other stuff, too, talking about Donald Trump courting billionaires, Will Sommer. They're talking about Donald Trump not being interested in America First. MTG brings this up in the post that she puts. It feels like it is now being used as a way to say Donald Trump has not been the guy that he promised to be.
I think we're seeing a lot more frustration from people in the MAGA movement and right-wing media about where Donald Trump is at right now. I mean, we saw him saying Americans aren't talented, so we need H-1B visas to bring people in. Just in the past few weeks, there has been a lot of growing dissatisfaction with Trump. There's this idea, prices aren't going down. And the Epstein emails here, I mean, look, as Brandy said, I think if any of these emails had come out about a Democratic politician, right-wing media would have been absolutely losing their mind. But at the same time, there is still some reaction here, even after several months of the White House trying to say, telling people, like we know Trump called Charlie Kirk, telling people saying, don't talk about this, stop talking about the Epstein files, it's over. And there's still that kind of rumbling. And as you said, I think this is getting folded into this broader idea that Trump has become too close with the tech billionaires, with the mega wealthy, and abandoned sort of the idea of populist MAGA movement.
What do you think, Molly?
I mean, I agree with Will, but it's amazing if you think that he was always, his whole thing was that he was a rich guy, right? That he's gotten too close with some different group of rich people. I mean, look, these politicians who are breaking with Trump over Epstein, they're not doing it because they're good people, right? They're doing it because they see, I mean, maybe it would be wonderful if it was, but.
Well, look, Nancy Mace is very, very adamant that she's on the side of survivors and having been the victim of abuse, she says.
Sure. But they're also politicians, right? So, but they are seeing political opportunity here. They see this is what cracks
What's
in
the
the
political
MAGA
opportunity for
movement.
Mace, who's running for governor? She's going to need his endorsement.
Well, I cannot necessarily speak to Mace, but certainly with MTG, certainly with Lauren Boebert, certainly they are seeing cracks in the MAGA movement. And that is why I don't think that anyone here is moving out of their own belief in the importance of, and I say this as someone who wishes that they were, but I do think they're seeing, this is what cracks in a movement look like. Are people going, well, what about this? Because remember, all of these people for so long were like anything he did where they were like, well, we can forgive it because of MAGA. And now all of a sudden they're like, well, what about this? And I do think that's meaningful.
Doug, I mean, we're talking about how this is exposing Donald Trump for not living up to the promises he made. It's always been a weird circle to try to square Donald Trump, the billionaire, caring about the working class and not caring about other billionaires, but whatever. Is this all overblown? Is this not that big of a deal? Is it going to go away? Is the fervor and this demand for the Epstein files, did it have its moment? Did it reach its peak?
Well, I think it's always been a steady chatter. I remember, Katie, over the summer, I was in Lake Ozark, Missouri, and I stopped in a business called Teresa's Trump Shop. And the lady that I spoke to there, I don't know if this was Teresa herself, told me, what's the holdup on the Epstein files? They're selling all the types of Donald Trump paraphernalia and merchandise. They didn't have any Epstein stuff, but she was concerned about that. So I think of that voter, but that's looking at one voter in one business with a microscope. And I think that's a lot of what we've been doing on this. So many times over the past 10 years, we've said, is this going to be when Republicans break with Donald Trump? And it turns out, no, not really. And so, this is going to go through the House. A lot of Republicans will vote for it. And I think we'll have a lot of coverage that's going to be very breathless saying, aha, now there are real cracks in the MAGA movement. But they're not going to go after Donald Trump on other stuff. So I do think we're blowing this up a lot more than is real, in part because discharge petitions don't happen very often. When I've worked on them, they've been spectacularly unsuccessful. But so a lot of House voters will go for this on the Republican aisle. Does the Senate move this? Maybe, maybe not. Does Donald Trump sign this into law? No, absolutely not.
Oh, come on, though. If he doesn't sign it into law, isn't he just feeding the fire of conspiracy? If he says, no, I don't think anybody should see the full Epstein files, how does that not boomerang back around into his face?
Look, he is a master at distracting us from whatever we're focused on in Washington that isn't necessarily what voters are focused on. So if I'm advising Trump, one, I'd want all of this information out there already years ago so that you can move past it. And he knows that his base is going to go with him on almost anything that he does. Access Hollywood taught us that years ago. And then Donald Trump will do what he always does. He's a matador. He waves a red cape and we all follow it. My God, we're outraged that he threw a Halloween party. My God, the East Wing of the Capitol, or of the White House. But if you go 30 miles outside of Washington, D.C., people are saying, my God, that sandwich that I bought today was too expensive. And that's the conversation Trump and Republicans should and want to have with voters.
That is a more dangerous conversation.
Yeah, but they don't want to have it, right? Because the thing is that inflation is, some of the inflation is from the tariffs. So, and inflation, as we saw
Isn't
from
he
Biden,
admitting today that he's going to lower the tariff on coffee?
But you can't do that with a trade war. You can't. Maybe Donald Trump can, and God bless him if he can. But, historically, normal calculus says you go into a trade war, you don't end until the war is over. So I don't know how you do that. But I do think I'll be curious to see, because inflation is a very hard solve. And we saw Biden world struggle with this, too.
I will leave it here. Free Press says that if you see 100+ votes breaking against Donald Trump in the House, they call it a humiliation for the president if suddenly a bunch of Republicans say, no, we want to see these Epstein files, despite the fact that Donald Trump is saying, no, don't vote.
Joining us now for his first TV comments since this reporting broke, Democratic Congressman Eric Swalwell of California.
Congressman Swalwell, thank you for joining us. You put out a statement shortly after this was made public, saying, of course, I will not end my lawsuit against him. Your statement seemed defiant. You are resolute, that you are not afraid. You have no fear. And I know earlier this year, you noted that you knew you could be a target. Now that this is out there and it's been out for a couple of hours, just take us inside your strategy going forward, sir. And have you actually heard from the Justice Department?
Well, first, of course, these allegations are false, just like the allegations against Adam Schiff are false and Letitia James are false and Lisa Cook are false. And a spoiler alert for you, there will be allegations next week against somebody that'll be false. No, the Justice Department has not said anything, just through leaked media reporting. But this is really about Donald Trump going after his political enemies. And no one has been a more vocal critic than me. And as you mentioned, I have one of the only remaining lawsuits against Donald Trump for his role on January 6th. I don't wake up every day going to work to fight Donald Trump. I fight for Californians. He just happens to get in the way. And if he thinks for 1 second that me or Adam Schiff or Tish James or Lisa Cook are going to back down or hide under the bed or shrink, he is wrong.
I think if we could, we have from the Wall Street Journal reporting, Congressman, that I think the context here is important to bring up, that just from 48 hours ago, a report in which Fannie Mae watchdogs were removed from their jobs who had been probing to see whether Trump appointee Bill Pulte had improperly obtained mortgage records of key Democratic officials, including New York Attorney General Letitia James, according to people familiar with the matter. Fannie's Ethics and Investigations Group had received internal complaints alleging senior officials had improperly directed staff to access the mortgage documents of James and others, according to the People. It was 2 months ago, I recall, when Bill Pulte, who is the head of the Federal Housing Finance Agency, made his first referrals as it pertained to Adam Schiff and Letitia James to the Department of Justice. That is what, to our understanding, has taken place today. Could you be specific when, as we wait to see if the Department of Justice seeks to take this up in a panel, a grand jury, when folks ask you about the specific allegations of a double primary residence, what do you say about your situation?
Yeah, I only have one mortgage and a residence in California, and I spend my time every week between California and Washington, D.C. This is, again, just Donald Trump doing everything he can to target his enemies. In our lawsuit, it's not lost on me that we've begun to depose members of the administration. And so you can connect the dots there if you will. But this is why being in the majority also matters, because these guys think that they can do this because they're invincible and there are no consequences. And a year from now, we are going to win the majority. And that's what we learned last Tuesday when California voters stood up against Donald Trump. And when we're in the majority, we will have subpoena power and accountability will happen. So Bill Pulte and any other lawless official who is carrying out these political prosecutions on behalf of Donald Trump, they should familiarize themselves with the Judiciary Committee room, because they're going to be spending a lot of time there answering questions. And I sure hope everything they did was above board.
Congressman, even as you talk about the House of Representatives, there's new reporting today from our colleagues at MSNBC that you are eyeing a run for governor of California. Does the timing of the president's legal actions against you change your thinking? And do you believe he is more concerned about you as a sitting member of Congress or as a candidate for governor of California?
Well, no news on running for governor. I think we have enough news for one day for me. And no, I'm not going to change a single thing about what I do to stand up against Donald Trump when he gets in the way of me fighting for Californians. And look, California is the greatest country in the world. Its next governor has to be excellent. That person has to be a fighter and a protector. But I'm telling you right now, I am not going to shrink one bit because of Donald Trump trying to intimidate me. And it's not working with any of the other colleagues that he's gone after either.
You know what, Congressman, table, folks at home, it is not lost on me that whether we are talking about Congressman Swalwell, Lisa Cook, Tish James prior to the charges being brought, Adam Schiff, which no charges have been brought against the senator yet, but I guess, wait and see. These are potential. I read the reporting about what Bill Pulte sent up, the letter that he wrote to the Justice Department about you, sir. There were terms like potential, perhaps, maybe. I didn't know we were opening up investigations on a looky-see, perhaps. This, to me, is very chilling. It should be upsetting to people, whether they are Democrats or Republicans. And I think people have to know what this is. Neutral governance in this country under the Trump administration, it does not currently exist. Because this is a president, in my opinion, that has weaponized the entirety. He's used the whole of government approach when it comes to weaponization. And what he is doing with the Justice Department. Today it is you, sir. Tomorrow it will be someone else. And my question is, what will it take to hear other individuals who are not at the other end of the target, individuals within the president's own party, stand up and say, enough is enough here? Because if they'll do it to you, who's to say Thomas Massie isn't on the list, right? He's caught the eye of the president.
This is a message to Thomas Massie that's what this is, that he will get to you if you oppose him. It's a message to Lauren Boebert. This president is entirely focused on going after his political enemies. But we should also step back and just ask, what is the cost of that focus? If he is putting under investigation his enemies and letting out of jail his supporters, where is his focus? We were told he would focus on lowering costs on day one. It's day 300. He's 0 for 300. He sent $40 billion to his friend down in South America. He's giving himself $230 million. He's giving a bunch of senators $500,000 each because their phone records were pulled for what they did on January 6th. And most Americans are just saying, when are you going to focus on me and my family and my needs and our dreams?
Separate, Congressman, from what developed here today and this apparent referral to the Department of Justice, your situation aside, I know Tish James was the example who ultimately had an indictment brought against her for this idea that she had two residencies in which both were listed as primary residencies. And I actually asked the Department of Justice, Attorney General Pam Bondi, about a month ago specifically whether she was looking into Trump administration cabinet officials who had the same accusations and situations against them. And my question here to you is, what does your conversation look like in these last hours among fellow members of Congress and other close allies of yours about how to respond to this specific situation, understanding that there is one party that is being targeted here by this Department of Justice, and understanding that there's a likelihood that there are going to be others? How are you guys moving forward and preparing for what could also amount to legal fees in a very broad scope and spectrum to which they are trying to take this even beyond you?
I want to tell you, because I've been overwhelmed by my California delegation colleagues who have reached out and sent messages of support. And what I just responded to them, I said, thanks, guys. Really grateful for the support and statements. Of course, it's all false. And whoever he accuses next week, that'll be false too. Our strength is our unity. And that has been the collective sense of not just the California delegation because of me and Adam Schiff, but of our caucus, that we have to all stick together. If he picks us off one by one, as he has done with law firms or universities or entertainment companies, you're much weaker. But when we link arms together and say, this is un-American, this is not who we are, we can stand up to him. And I'm inspired again by my fellow neighbors in California who stood up to him last week to match what he did in Texas. There is a way to beat this guy.
In researching today for this segment, Congressman, in reading in, it struck me that there are now photos of your home, the home in question here, that are splashed all over the internet, photos of the exterior, photos of the interior. You, because you have been a critic of the president, have also been a target of his admirers' ire for a long time now. And I wonder if you feel that those threats to your safety, to the safety of your family, have become more acute in the past 24 hours.
They have, and we have to have security. And my kids are not allowed to play outside in the front yard because of that. But again, if the aim is that people like me and others are going to shrink or are going to be quiet, it's not going to work, because the second that I stop holding this president accountable, why would anyone else go to a No Kings rally? Why would anybody else stand in line to vote? If I allow him to make me weak, why would I be able to ask my fellow citizens to be strong? So I will continue to stand up to him and his un-American ways. And my family and I, we will be fine. I'll protect them. I'll protect my staff. But protecting our democracy and its rule of law while we have it is paramount right now.
You know, Congressman, it's also not lost on me that you are very much so confronting, as Alicia just laid out, a situation that is quite precarious for your family, for your children. You've been a guest on this show many times. Sometimes you and other lawmakers, your children are with you. I've met your children. I'm sure this is very harrowing. It's not lost on me, though, that you are not you understand that this is not specifically just about you. And if you just take a look at all of the individuals as of late that have been targeted, A.G. Tish James, yourself, Congresswoman by the government, LaMonica McIver, Lisa Cook, I think each of you represent something that the president fears or feels as though stands in his way. And when it comes to you, not only could you be a candidate for governor, we'll be waiting for that answer in California, but also you served as impeachment manager for one of the president's impeachments, as well as the fact that at the same time, he is trying to rewrite the history of January 6th. And so it's not lost on me that the targeting of you could serve many purposes for this president, and that this is all, shall we say, also not normal, and something I thought that the government took care of post-Watergate with the reforms.
Simone, thank you for that. And yes, I was just chosen to lead the Democratic effort on the January 6th investigation, where the president is trying to erase the heroism of the police officers who responded that day. And I'm not going to let him do that. And, you know, look, I'll be honest with you. I have family members who have called and friends who have called and have said, you know, why don't you just drop the lawsuit or try and strike a deal with the guy and see if, you know, he won't go after you. But that's not the way I was raised. I'm the son of a cop. I saw my dad every day make hard decisions, you know, to hold powerful people accountable. And that's what I see in LaMonica McIver and Adam Schiff and so many others. And who knows who you'll be talking about next week. We just know that there will be somebody new next week. But there's a way out of this. And it's the same vigor and passion that those officers showed to defend the Capitol on January 6th, that protesters showed to go to the No Kings rally, that Californians showed to go to the ballot box. And we're just a year away of winning the majority and cutting our time in hell by half.
Damning Epstein emails. It's evidence that is clearly rocking the Trump White House. And now, congressional Democrats, who first released the handful of Epstein emails that implicated Trump, are finding that what they're doing with facts is working. Remember, this was a development where the Democrats used those emails to bring facts to what had at times felt like a Trump propaganda fight. But the emails, the facts, starting yesterday morning, upended everything. Those damning emails driving headlines and outrage across the nation. Trump being alleged by Epstein to have known about the girls. Of course he knew about the girls, he was told. Some Trump voters, people around the world, all reacting to this. Epstein and his now convicted conspirator Maxwell discussed in 2011 how Trump spent, quote, hours with a victim at Epstein's house. And so those first emails, if you're following this story, swiftly led to thousands more. And the only reason there were thousands of other documents, emails, material sitting around Congress was that Republicans had it and had been holding it all back, holding back that material on Epstein from the public. Now, Democrats had forced their hand yesterday morning, and so Republicans then dropped more material. Congress is going further. It is now on a path to vote on releasing even more Epstein material. And so I'm going to show you a few more things in the reaction, but as we kind of take this in a day into the story, basically, we can see how facts and pressure can still matter in this MAGA era, even on an issue where Donald Trump has pulled out all the stops to pressure his own party, and it's his Republican Party that controls both houses of Congress. And yet here we are watching more material come out and a glide path to a vote, which is expected to have even more Republican defections. Indeed, most members of Congress willing to say anything about this now escalating Trump-Epstein crisis have been uniformly negative, including Republicans.
I am for transparency. I do think this was a disaster for the White House.
These are damning, and this is, I think, the tip of the iceberg.
Any information that's released has to be taken seriously. This set of documents just should persuade them that one way or the other, we are going to see these files.
The American people deserve clarity on this issue.
Let's have the left and the right come together to say enough with the Epstein class. They need to go.
I think we need to get that information out. I think transparency is important.
This pales in comparison to what the Department of Justice has.
Now, those are voices from both parties, and they're confronting the Epstein bombshell. And among Republicans, there are a lot of folks bracing for how much worse it can get, because a lot's changed here in the past day and a half. The new Epstein-Trump emails are bad, and Trump is acting like what you see on your screen is not the worst of it for him. Like whatever else is still hidden in the remaining Epstein files must be worse, because if not, now would be the time to just join the transparency, soldier through a punishing week of already bad news, if the other stuff was going to be similar or less than this for him. Now, we can note Trump denies any wrongdoing, but he is not suggesting that the evidence would clear him. And he's losing more and more Republicans as the time goes. The House is back in session. They have the votes to override what has been the Republican Speaker's effort to hide any remaining Epstein material. That's what Trump wants, which itself is a bit of a tell. Now a coming vote will decide if Congress demands that the DOJ release the complete Epstein files or whatever is legally allowable. That is what, of course, Trump ran on doing and then broke that campaign vow. Speaker Johnson has admitted defeat on this front. He lost his battle to stop any vote. And so now, having lost, he's trying to speed up this period, which is a little different from what he could do. He's now saying today that the coming vote will be sooner than the amount of time allowed under the rules. He is going to have it as soon as next week rather than what he could have done, which is run out the clock longer. And that's probably a calculation that this thing is front burner and looks terrible, and he is in a losing process. And in politics, if you're losing a battle, you try to lose it quickly, go on to the wider war. He is still Speaker, but on the Epstein issue, he's not in charge. He has been overruled by the majority. This thing we talk about, they call it a discharge petition, is when you have enough votes to override the sitting Speaker. It almost never happens, certainly not on a bipartisan basis. And yet here we are because of how this has just taken off. Now, some congressional insiders also say that while Republicans did hold the line for months joining the Trump-Johnson effort to avoid any votes, they would have to put their names down in public and thus avoid any further Epstein revelations. Now that the vote is happening, and it'll be in public if it happens next week, and with the damning new emails, insiders say House Republicans will have a lot of pressure here to back transparency and the thing so many of them campaigned on last year instead of more secrecy for the deceased sex trafficker. And the Democrat who backs the Epstein disclosure bill, Ro Khanna, we played a little bit of sound from him just a moment ago, might recognize his face. He is saying that he expects over 40 Republicans could vote against Trump on this. So that is where we're headed. Over here, the people saying nothing matters, you got to wait till the next midterms. And over here is actual reality. Damning new information that Donald Trump, despite being a powerful president with his party controlling Congress, that he couldn't fight back. He could not keep that secret. And the Democrats using their lawful authority on that oversight committee, along with their bipartisan outreach there, I showed you Khanna and Massey, the Republican, to get somewhere on this. There's also more emails that have come out from that later group that I mentioned over the past day. And they show Trump's links to Epstein could go later than was initially suggested by Trump. He had said their relationship had ended, and there is some corroboration that it certainly cooled at one point, and they had this dispute about what was going on at Mar-a-Lago. But in these newly revealed, long secret communications, Epstein asserts that his 2017 Thanksgiving plans included Trump attending in person down there. This is years after Trump said the whole relationship was over. Epstein's tone also seemed to sour on Trump. He slammed his business practices. This was in 2018. Discussing that he knows how dirty Donald is and that he guessed the non-lawyers and New York business people had no idea. That refers to a kind of way that Trump does business and other things he may do that people didn't really realize when he was just back as a reality show star or whatnot. Specifically, this was during a period that you might remember if you follow the news. There was a lot of heat on Trump. There was an open Mueller probe. This was before he would go on to lose the 2020 campaign, when he was thought to be ultimately a one-termer. And he was under this pressure, Epstein writing about when Trump's former fixer, Michael Cohen, cooperated against Trump and ultimately, of course, criticized and testified against him in public and implicated him in something he had denied any knowledge of, which was a secret hush money payment to Stormy Daniels. Now, that kind of NDA arrangement related to allegedly sexual contact is something that Epstein's associates also used and knew about, although in this instance, there was never any crime alleged between Stormy Daniels and Donald Trump, two consenting adults. But the whole idea of a fixer and an NDA and secret stuff, this was Epstein's world. And so he was keyed in on this. And there's a 2018 text message where an unidentified sender says, oh, it'll all blow over. They're really just trying to take down Trump and doing whatever they can to do that. If you remember that period of time, that sounds like someone who is sympathetic to Trump, who sees any investigation or accountability as just kind of a conspiracy to bring him down. But to respond to that, Epstein, who had once been so close to Trump, and we saw them socializing and all the rest, responds, it's wild because I am the one able to take him down. Now, if that's just a random text in the wind, you might not think much of it. Indeed, politics, media, and the sordid circles that Epstein ran in were full of people doing bluster and exaggeration. That's why a real investigation, if it's done by the government or by independent parties, such as what journalists try to do, you take in a lot of different material. So that text alone could be bluster. But couple that text with the earlier corroboration that Epstein was secretly texting and emailing Maxwell, later convicted of sex trafficking crimes, about what Trump did and knowing about the girls and being alone with one. Couple that with Michael Wolff, the Trump author, in the other messages talking to Epstein about basically having a, quote, debt or an ability to blackmail Donald Trump with what Epstein, the sex trafficker, knew about him. And then couple that with Donald Trump's own cabinet member saying that Epstein was a blackmailer. But did the cabinet member know that one of the questions that would soon come up is whether he also could blackmail President Trump? And why did Attorney General Bondi claim that she had more files and evidence to release, including a, quote, client list, and then release a 2-page memo that, remember, it said there's nothing else of any value to the public. She later said there's no client list, and that 2-page memo also said there's no blackmail to investigate. A funny thing to do so many 180s and everyone to keep talking about this type of extortion by this deceased sex trafficker who keeps bringing up Donald Trump in messages that the Trump administration has tried so hard and failed to keep secret.
So one of the things that is credible to me and is an indicia of reliability is when you have Jeffrey Epstein speaking to Ghislaine Maxwell in at a time period where there's no reason to make up a story about Donald Trump. And Jeffrey Epstein is saying, he has not barked. He has not essentially spoken about me and what he knows about me. And Ghislaine Maxwell says, I was thinking about that too. So she clearly understands what he's saying. She doesn't say, what are you talking about? What would he possibly know? And that's done at a time, and it's between two people where there's no reason for them to be lying to each other about it. And then, of course, you have lots and lots of corroborating evidence, way too much to go into here. What I find interesting is if you're actually doing a real investigation, if you were not doing a cover-up, and we're living through the cover-up, you would not have Todd Blanche tweeting today that he was not aware of these documents. Let's take that as face value. Let's assume that is true. That means that there has not been an adequate investigation. It means that they have not subpoenaed and done search warrants of the obvious emails and texts that you would want from Jeffrey Epstein, from Ghislaine Maxwell, from all of the other people. And that's taking what he said as true, that he said that this was something law enforcement did not have.